Hello again, watch friends. Welcome back. How cheap can a mechanical watch be and still be something you'd want to put on your wrist? Here are two, a Russian and a Japanese, Vostok and Seiko, that can each be had for under $100. If you want a cheap watch that is going to keep excellent time, get a quartz. A Casio F91W can be had for $10 and will tell you the time, every time, but it has no soul. For something that you and I would be interested in, only a mechanical watch will do. Let's start with the Vostok. The Vostok Amphibia. It comes in many models, different colored dials, different bezels, different dial designs, but they're mostly divers. One popular is the Scuba Dude. Mine is the submarine version, which I think is cool. It's Russian made, but where do you buy it? Well, usually from eBay. One source is Zenitar, but there are other online sources as well. It costs about $50 plus shipping, maybe about $15. So for $65, you have a watch that's available either in a date or no date version. The date has no quick set, so you need to scroll back and forth from 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. to advance the date. And these watches are heavily modded. Do a search on Vostok and you'll find all kinds of interesting mods. In fact, I have a mod with a Rolex-looking bezel attached to the Vostok. That looks cool too. So let's talk about the Vostok itself. Well, it's an automatic movement. It's an in-house movement. Self-winding. 2416-B is the date version, or the 2416, which is the no date version, with 31 joules. Water resistance is 200 meters. It's got a central second hand. It's got an anti-shock balance, screw down winding head and back cover. The case diameter is 40 millimeters. The thickness is 12 millimeters, and the strap width is a standard 18 millimeters. It comes on a stainless steel bracelet or a strap, and the bezel has graduated markings. Power reserve is 31 hours. The rear cap is stainless steel, and it's got luminous hands and markings. Designed in 1967 and built initially for USSR Navy as a diver and later space program watch, the Vostok has been around for quite a long time. The crown seems at first cheap, wobbly, and appears to be broken. However, there is a reason for this design. It uses a traditional O-ring gasket between the crown and the case. The crown is deliberately wobbly for protection. Sideways pressure on the crown is not transmitted to the movement when winding the crown. Also, when the crown is screwed in, the winding stem is disengaged from the keyless works, so no force on the movement, and no damage to the movement when there is a shock to the crown. It's a little tricky to adjust the time due to the clutch mechanism. Pulling out the crown seems to move between time adjustment mode and manual wind mode, where just the proper amount of engagement determines the function, winding or time setting. It takes a little bit of practice to get used to. It has an acrylic crystal. As the water pressure increases when diving, the crystal is flattened and therefore makes a better watertight seal with the case. This is in comparison to the traditional method of using an O-ring gasket between the crystal and the case. The bezel rotates in both directions, unlike most divers, and there's no click stop. I'm not sure I'd trust this as an air supply timing device if I were diving. The loom is, for lack of a better term, ridiculous. If it lasts 10 minutes, that's a lot. And the case back, instead of using an O-ring gasket between the screw down case back and case for water tightness, the Vostok uses a two-piece screw-on case back, where the outer one presses on the O-ring against the inner one. The higher the pressure, the stronger the seal. This negates the traditional approach problem of having to replace the O-ring every time the case back is opened. So interestingly, two features, both the crystal and the case back, the deeper you go, the more watertight the watch becomes. On the time grapher, I get a pretty consistent plus 30 seconds per day. That's half a minute fast every day, which is really unacceptable. The good news is that it has a fairly strong balance spring, and the beat error of 0.1 milliseconds shows that the balance wheel is swinging equally in both directions. But still, this is not a watch that's highly accurate for sure. So, in summary, the Vostok looks cheap because it is cheap. But it's also retro. But it's also heavy and bulky. It's a 1960s design and Soviet manufacturing quality. This is a no-frills watch that's great for a beater, but I wouldn't rely on it for precise timekeeping or water resistance. Its best feature is that it looks cool, sort of, and the Russian pedigree. The Seiko SNK 809 is an entry-level model in the Seiko 5 line, which dates back, the line that is, to the early 1960s. According to Seiko, the Seiko 5 line got its name because of the 5 traits of each model in the line. They are durable case and bracelet, recessed crown at 4 o'clock, day-date display, automatic winding, and water resistance. This SNK is an all-stainless steel watch with minimal dimensions. It looks a little like a pilot watch, but pilot watches, even in their early incarnations, were never this small. The bezel and top of the case has a satin or bead-blasted finish. Notice that the overall impression of the watch is a bit militaristic. Seiko is known for this motif, and I have several vintage pieces that also include this look. Some specs. It's got a 37mm diameter, 10.6mm thickness. The lug width is a standard 18mm, and the lug-to-lug distance is 43mm. This is a svelte watch, reminiscent of watches from decades ago when men wore 34 to 38mm watch sizes. Although it seems small by today's standards, it still is a watch worth considering if you're unsure about a mechanical watch and want a mass-produced, best-in-breed watch. At first glance, the white numerals on a black dial provide excellent contrast, which makes reading the time incredibly easy. The leaf hour and minute hands are attractive, but to me, the highlight is the seconds hand. The red tip adds a classy touch to what otherwise might be a monochromatically boring dial. In addition, the lollipop counterweight nicely balances the hand. There's a lot going on here, from the dial within a dial motif, the minutes on the outer chapter ring, hours on the inner ring, to the Seiko 5 logo at 12 o'clock. The day-date window is both readable and blends in well with the dial aesthetic so as not to call undue attention to itself. Seiko's Hardlex crystal provides protection against scratching and is consistent with the watch at this price point. One would not expect a sapphire crystal on a $60 watch, but the lume, or lack of it, is nothing to write home about, especially if you're doing so in the dark. When fully charged, it lasts less than an hour, but looks cool while it lasts. Lume pips at the 5-minute markers, or hour indicators, and hands is present. Interestingly, the lollipop counterweight is loomed rather than the tip of the seconds hand. Again, Seiko needed to cut some corners on their cheapest watch. At the back of the watch, the case is polished, and you can see that this SNK has a display back. Some would argue about the necessity of a display back on such a cheap watch. I mean, there really isn't anything special to look at here. But I would think that for the first-time mechanical watch owner, seeing the gears move and the rotor twirl would be exciting. Personally, seeing watch movements doing their thing got me hooked on mechanical watches early on, so why not here? I like the crown position at 4 o'clock. It doesn't dig into my wrist and looks kind of cool. But sometimes it's a little difficult to pull out. The fabric strap that comes with this watch is one of the chief negatives. It looks and feels cheap and can be scratchy on the wrist. The first thing I do is replace the strap. You can find numerous strap alternatives in the $10 to $15 range, and that will be an instant improvement, whether you use a standard strap or a NATO or something else. Seiko offers the SNK 809 in a variety of dial colors: blue, green, beige, and this one, the black dial variant. Some of the others have slightly different reference numbers, but they all cost the same and are readily available. Each one has a cheesy fabric strap in a color that matches the dial. I think the black dial / white numerals and markings, this watch, provides not only the best contrast, but is also the most attractive. The movement is Seiko's, I almost hate to say it, in-house 7S26 automatic. This caliber has been used by Seiko in a variety of inexpensive watches and is thought to be robust, but not necessarily accurate. It ticks at 21,600 beats per hour and has a relatively standard 40-hour power reserve. There is no manual winding capability or hacking on this movement. It's an automatic only. There is some more good about this 21 jewel movement. It does have shock protection, and the rotor automatically winds the movement in both directions, so the winding is surprisingly quick. Also, the day and date allow quick setting. There's nothing, or a few things, more frustrating than having to set the day and date of a watch the old-fashioned way by moving the hands to and fro from 10 o'clock to 2 a.m. On some of their older watches, Seiko allowed day and date setting by how hard you pressed the crown. A light press changed the day, and a stronger press changed the date. That was a clever way of doing it. Quick setting is easier, though. Speaking of date change, the SNK 809 has a really slow date change that starts about 10 o'clock p.m. and finishes about 3 o'clock the next morning, maybe even a little bit later. On a time grapher, this movement's accuracy seems really bad. At the end of this video, I'll attempt to regulate it and see if I can improve the results. Hopefully I won't destroy the watch in the process. Seiko says the 7S26 movement should run about plus or minus 25 seconds per day. Quite a range. But I've known people who get less than plus 15 seconds per day with this watch right out of the box. So we'll see. I think the bottom line is that you can get a reasonably good mechanical watch for not a lot of money. Whether it's the somewhat funky Vostok or the epitome of mass production Seiko SNK, there are choices. And when I say reasonable, I'm using the term loosely. As I mentioned, I was very disappointed with the SNK accuracy out of the box. Surprisingly, the Russian watch was much better. Still, one of these watches can easily be a gateway watch into something with more features, better quality, better accuracy, or just plain nicer looking. So there they are, the Russian and the Japanese. Two cheap watches for your consideration. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.